The story begins with the mighty emperor of the kingdom summoning his grand court. In the midst of this grand assembly, there stood a stunningly beautiful woman, trembling before the emperor. Her name was Ashya, and the emperor issued an extraordinary decree: she would have the power to choose anyone in the court to be her spouse. The hall erupted into a cacophony of whispers, with everyone murmuring about how Ashya, not even a noble woman, was being given the unprecedented chance to select her husband from among the royals present. Ashya herself was in utter disbelief. The reward for dedicating her life to battle was the right to choose a marriage partner. It was an astonishing, almost absurd proposition. Valiant warrior Emir Pervaz, a loyal knight, set off to battle knowing it was a mission akin to a death sentence. In return, the crown prince exiled him to the northern wilderness, sending him on a perilous mission to annihilate the Luria tribe. This loyal knight, knowingly walking into the jaws of death, was none other than Ashya's father. Abandoned by the empire in the desolate war zone of Pervaz, without any support, he fought bravely in that forsaken land until he drew his last breath on the battlefield. After her father's tragic death, Ashya's uncles took over his responsibilities. When they too passed, Ashya herself rose to their place. Finally, after a fierce and grueling battle, Ashya managed to decapitate the tribe's leader, bringing an end to the war. Yet, their triumphant joy was abruptly cut short, for they were on the brink of starvation even before winter had ended. In the dilapidated Pervaz castle, one of Ashya's warriors remarked that Pervaz was an extraterritorial land of the empire, which is why the emperor paid no attention to it. Ashya, however, pointed to the letter from the empire, reminding everyone that the emperor had promised a reward if they successfully drove out the Luria tribe from Pervaz. The warrior, filled with skepticism, asked if she truly believed the emperor would honor his word. Ashya, uncertain but resolute, replied that she wasn't sure, but they had no other options. If they didn't take action, Pervaz would starve to death. Their hopes of receiving a reward were slim, considering the emperor had sent her father to his death. Why would he now go out of his way to reward them? Emperor Hendrix Evaristo scrutinizes Ashya and inquires if Emir had indeed fallen in battle, leaving her to inherit the position of commander of Pervaz, despite being a woman. Ashya confirms, yes, that's what happened. The emperor responds with a vicious grin, commenting that he wasn't aware of this. He merely thought that the barbaric princess had come to the banquet for some other reason. The hall erupts in murmurs, with everyone agreeing that barbaric princess is a fitting nickname for Ashya. Determined, Ashya decides to bear the humiliation if it means securing the money needed for the people of Pervaz to survive the winter. The emperor then asks Ashya her age. Respectfully, she replies, "I am Ashya Pervaz, turning 22 years old this year." The emperor further questions if she has ever been courted before, to which Ashya answers she hasn't. With a wicked smile, the emperor suggests a suitable reward for her victory, the right to select her partner. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the court shifts, and Ashya can hardly believe what she has just heard. The emperor elaborates that he will provide her with the registry of nobles so she can choose whomever she wants, and that person will be obligated to marry her. He also informs Ashya that the nobles listed at the beginning are of higher rank, implying she might want to choose from there. Ashya raises a concern before the emperor, asking what would happen if the person she chooses does not want to marry her. Wouldn't that create difficulties for both parties? The emperor declares that in such a case, it would be considered an act of defying the emperor's command, and the offending party's family would have to pay compensation to the royal family and to her. Ashya's eyes widened in shock as she finally grasped the emperor's scheme. He didn't intend to give them the reward money for their victory. Resolutely, Ashya decided that no parent would want their son to marry a barbaric woman like her. If she chose wisely, she could compel a wealthy family to pay her a large sum of money if they refused her decision, according to imperial law. With firm resolve, Ashya announced her choice: Carlisle Haven, the duke beside the king. Carlisle Haven's full name was Carlisle Haven Evaristo. He had been temporarily stripped of his crown prince status, originally being the crown prince until he was dethroned 4 days ago due to a scandal. Now, he had moved from the royal family to the list of nobles. Ashya pointed out that, according to the emperor's words, Carlisle was listed at the very top among the nobles with good reputations, making him the highest ranked. The court erupted into a frenzy of discussion, with many declaring that Ashya was crazy and predicting she would be sentenced to death for her audacity. However, Ashya firmly reminded the court that if the duke refused, according to the royal decree, his father's family would have to pay her a substantial sum of money. The murmurs and whispers confirmed that Ashya was right about this. Before the emperor could respond, Carlisle burst into loud laughter. Infuriated, the emperor demanded that Pervaz hero of war rethink her decision. Ashya, steeling herself, tells the emperor that her desired marriage partner is not Duke Carlisle Haven. She proposes that if he offers a monetary reward for their victory instead, she will retract her decision. Carlisle rises from his seat, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Is she trying to make a fool out of His Majesty the Emperor now? The Emperor's promise is not something that can be easily broken. As the first son of His Majesty, I won't stand for this nonsense. But neither can I take my father's promise lightly. Carlisle steps closer to Ashya, halting directly in front of her. With a resolute gaze, he announces, I accept your proposal. Ashya's heart races, she couldn't believe what she had just heard. She needed money right now, but instead, she was getting a husband. Carlisle smirks, a glint of mischief in his eyes. I look forward to our life together, my lady. Later, in the royal reception room, Ashya is summoned by Carlisle. With a sarcastic tone, Carlisle shouts, My lady, the brave Pervaz Knight Commander finally arrives. Ashya looks at Carlisle's relaxed expression and cannot get a read on him at all. She bows and delivers her greetings. It is my utmost honor to be graced by the royal family, so I respectfully greet the Crown Prince. Suddenly, Ashya realizes Carlisle is not the Crown Prince anymore, and wonders if she should just call him the Duke of Carlisle Haven from now on. Carlisle interrupts her thoughts, asking if she is aware of the reason why his title of Crown Prince was taken away. Ashya and her party had just arrived in the capital and learned that Carlisle had trespassed into the chambers of the Emperor's cherished concubine. Knowing this, Ashya comments that the Emperor is fond of women, and it seemed that the prince inherited that from him. Back in the present, Carlisle tells Ashya that even if she didn't know what he did, she must now accept it as her lady. Ashya goes silent, unsure how to respond. Carlisle questions her, Why are you so quiet? Has my handsomeness enchanted you to this extent? Ashya immediately retorts, Rather than your handsomeness, what really enchanted me is your physique. She explains, a larger body is an easier target, but there is strength behind a fortified constitution. Carlisle, intrigued, asks if she means in battle. Ashya firmly replies, yes, and tells Carlisle that she'd like to have such a body, but it's nearly impossible. Carlisle finds Ashya's reaction refreshing. Carlisle then asks if they can start discussing their deal. Ashya is puzzled, not understanding what deal Carlisle is talking about. Carlisle sarcastically questions if she really thought he accepted a proposal from a brave Pervaz Knight Commander because he fell for her. Ashya asks what other motive he has, then. Carlisle informs her that his father set a condition for abdication. Carlisle has to serve the empire for 3 years and leave behind his arrogance. For those 3 years, the land of Pervaz will continue to be devastated by the spoils of war, but if Ashya wants to keep serving them, she can go ahead. Ashya, seeking clarity, asks, 3 years and then what? Carlisle picks up a cup of tea and casually replies, then, the divorce. He continues, in return, you will not interfere with whatever I do in Pervaz for those 3 years. He advises her not to expect any care or attention from him and not to entertain the idea of siding with his adversaries. If she complies with these conditions, he promises he won't skimp on financial and material support for Pervaz. Ashya thinks she cannot let Pervaz be swayed by this man without knowing his intentions. She inquires, what are you planning to do in Pervaz? If it harms Pervaz, I can't accept it. Carlisle, with a smirk, counters, and if you don't accept it, what will happen to your starving people? He adds, I also don't wish to harm Pervaz, so you should help me succeed. With a heavy heart, Ashya accepts his proposal but requests that they write down a contract. Carlisle raises an eyebrow at the mention of a contract. Ashya explains, as you said, you won't skimp on the support needed for reconstruction, which is why I want a contract specifying those details. Carlisle agrees, saying, I also don't trust promises given only through words. He then jokes, we, as a married couple, will get along well. Ashya questions, a contractual marriage where we take only what we need from each other and then cleanly break up, is that what you're suggesting? Carlisle grins, pointing out, the conversation is already going well. Carlisle presents a draft of plans to restore Pervaz to its original state to Lionel Bailey, his closest confidant. Bailey, skeptical, asks, are you really going to marry such a barbarian princess? Carlisle replies with a smirk, it's just for 3 years, when will such a great opportunity arise again? Bailey, curious, inquires, what opportunity are you talking about? Carlisle responds, the opportunity to eliminate those who dared to cross my path. He recounts his past, explaining how he has been driven to the battlefield since he was 15. After his biological mother's death, his stepmother, who became the empress, wished for his demise. He fought repeatedly, surviving due to a blessing from the gods he received at birth. Carlisle Haven's name was chanted by the entire empire after each of his victories in war. But his stepmother, Empress Beatrice, was unhappy and pulled strings to make her biological son, Matthias, the crown prince. One day, the young concubine of the emperor, Viviana Lowry, accuses Carlisle of opening her chamber door in the middle of the night. Carlisle tries to explain to his father that he was unaware Viviana was in the chamber and believes someone must have set a trap to humiliate him. However, the emperor does not listen and strips Carlisle of his crown prince position. Back in the present, Carlisle comments, "The empress's plan to remove my father's concubine and both of her enemies in one go must have succeeded." Bailey, concerned, remarks, "And thanks to that, Matthias is temporarily treated as the successor." He further adds, "In 3 years, the empress will find a fault and strip you of your status permanently, probably making Matthias the official successor." Carlisle bangs the table and firmly states, "The throne is mine, and I will kill everyone who covets it. I have to build my strength outside the empress's reach, and Pervaz Castle is suitable for that." Bailey nods, "Well, Pervaz Castle is extraterritorial after all." Carlisle adds, "At this point, if the successor of Pervaz takes me, isn't it a blessing from the gods?" Bailey still raises a concern, "Are you planning to marry a woman you are meeting for the first time? Do you even know what kind of woman she is?" Carlisle smirks, "It's not the first time I am meeting her. I have met Ashya before." A few days ago, in the capital of the empire, Euro, Carlisle wandered through the city under the cover of night, his mind consumed by thoughts of how he had been overpowered by the empress and stripped of his crown prince status. In reality, he had been urgently summoned because he had received a letter from a new informant seeking to make contact. Carlisle, having spread rumors about his despondency and seclusion, intended to use this opportunity to make a decisive move. Suddenly, a gang of thugs blocked Carlisle's path, seizing him roughly and demanding that he have a little chat if he wanted to pass through safely. Carlisle's irritation flared. He had concealed his identity precisely to avoid such nuisances, and now these pests were crawling out of the woodwork. Just as Carlisle was about to deal with the thugs, a voice rang out, cutting through the tension. It was none other than Ashya, who stepped forward and scolded the thugs for picking on a lone individual. She declared that her group would be joining the fray to even the odds. Before the leader of the thugs could utter a word, Ashya charged forward with fierce determination and knocked him out with a single, crushing punch. As Ashya effortlessly took down the thug leader with a single, devastating punch, the remaining 2 thugs tensed, their confidence crumbling in the face of a girl overpowering their boss. Carlisle observed Ashya with keen interest, noting her stance was firm and unwavering, reminiscent of a seasoned warrior. One of the thugs, desperate to regain control, ordered his pupil to attack Ashya. But before the attack could commence, a tall man from Ashya's group intervened, seizing the thug with ease and mocking him for sending a mere pupil into battle instead of fighting himself. The tall man then turned to Ashya and asked, "Are you planning to kill these thugs?" Ashya replied with grim determination, "It would be better for them." Carlisle could see that Ashya wasn't bluffing. She and her companion exuded the cold, unyielding aura of individuals accustomed to taking lives. The tall man then reminded Ashya, "We shouldn't get into trouble before entering the palace." Acknowledging his point, Ashya ordered the thugs to flee. As they scurried away, Carlisle approached Ashya, expressing his gratitude for her timely intervention. He offered her a reward for her assistance. The tall man, still by Ashya's side, promptly interjected, "Instead of a reward, could you recommend us a cheap inn around here?" Ashya nodded in agreement, adding, "Yes, a recommendation would be helpful. Inns in the capital are very expensive, and with our group of 5, we'd be fine sharing one room if it's affordable." Carlisle listened to their request and, seeing the practicality of their situation, guided them to a modest inn nearby. Back in the present, Bailey asks Carlisle if it was because of Margravine Ashya that he arrived late that day. Carlisle confirms, "Yes, it was thanks to her that we could clean up and enter the palace. If Ashya had shown up in her previous state, she wouldn't have been called the barbarian princess, she would have been labeled the beggar chieftain. Bailey, amused, exclaims, "She beat up a thug with her bare fists. If you mess up, she might just beat you too." Carlisle responds calmly, "If the Empress sends assassins, they won't be so easily defeated." Bailey acknowledges this as a valid point. Carlisle continues, "As long as the matter involves the reconstruction of Pervaz, Ashya can't betray me. Even though I invited her to stay with me at my manor, she said she was uncomfortable and chose to return to the inn. That shows she's a better ally than most." At the same time, Ashya informs her group about her decision to enter into a contract marriage. Decker Donovan, a member of Ashya's group, raises a serious concern. "It's too dangerous. Carlisle is just using you as a shield for the Crown Prince's plot." Ashya, resolute, responds, "It doesn't matter." Decker is incredulous. "How can it not matter when your life is on the line?" Ashya replies with unwavering determination, "If selling myself can save Pervaz, then I'll gladly be sold many times over. At this rate, I think I've been sold for a very good price." With this money, no one will starve or freeze to death this winter. We can heal the wounded and sow seeds in the fields. She envisions the desolated plains of Kaiker, once barren, now rippling with grain. The thought brings her a profound sense of happiness, a feeling she's never experienced before. Her optimism is palpable, leaving the rest of her group in stunned silence. Decker, with a hint of hesitation, asks, when does the ceremony take place? Ashya responds, fortunately, we're skipping the wedding ceremony itself. We'll say our vows and head straight to Pervaz. Decker furrows his brow, commenting, still, it's a royal ceremony. Wouldn't that take months? And Pervaz will be starving the entire time you're here. The next day, Ashya asks Carlisle, when do you think we can leave? Next week, or the week after? Carlisle ponders the question, noting the importance of the occasion. It's still a wedding. Wouldn't it be a shame to rush through it? Do you have a reason for the hurry? A boyfriend, perhaps? Ashya responds calmly, yes, that's right. The people in Pervaz are waiting for me to return, so I'm in a hurry. Carlisle, understanding the urgency, agrees. I see. I'll expedite the process. We'll select a dress from what's available and make any necessary alterations. I'll have my eldest maid start with the preparations immediately. Soon, the maids begin the extensive preparations. They bathe Ashya thoroughly, and she realizes that these preparations are all about removing dirt and enhancing her appearance. Ashya is uncomfortable with the process, as she's always dressed and lived like a man. Despite her reservations, she endures the treatments and eventually emerges looking like a refined young lady. When Carlisle sees Ashya in her ladylike attire, his eyes widen in surprise. With a glum and disheartened expression, Ashya greets Carlisle. To her astonishment, Carlisle bursts into hearty laughter upon seeing her. You look like a sore loser, he exclaims, his voice full of mirth. Ashya, her frustration evident, snaps back, that's exactly how I feel. They wouldn't let me keep a single weapon for self-defense. The eldest maid, Luber, steps forward and says, I've made this outfit far too simple for a royal occasion, but Ashya insisted on this dress, claiming it's the most comfortable among your collection. Carlisle, with a reassuring smile, responds, don't worry about that. I've prepared something special for the occasion. He then dramatically presents a dazzling shining object, holding it aloft for Luber to see. Luber's eyes widen in shock as she gazes at the radiant object, her surprise evident. With evident surprise, Luber asks, is this the necklace of the late Highness Ivelina? She further adds, such a splendid ruby and diamond necklace, a simple dress would indeed be better suited. I can't believe you would give such a precious thing to Ashya. Ashya, puzzled, asks, is that a ruby? Luber, incredulous, questions, can't you tell just by looking at it? Ashya stares intently at the necklace, realizing she should learn more about gemstones. Carlisle, understanding her unfamiliarity, explains in the simplest terms, you could buy 100 war horses if you sold this. Ashya's eyes widen in disbelief. Over 1,000,000 Veronas, she whispers. Carlisle takes the necklace and gently ties it around Ashya's neck. Think of it as a down payment, he says with a smile. Ashya, feeling the weight of the gem, starts to imagine selling the necklace and buying food for the starving people of Pervaz. Carlisle suddenly catches a whiff of Ashya's scent and asks, did you put on perfume? Ashya nods, explaining, the maids brought perfumes that smelled like flowers and fruits, but I don't like those sweet scents, so I chose something that smells like grass. Carlisle's expression changes slightly at her words. Noticing it, Ashya asks, is there something wrong? Carlisle quickly recovers, replying, no, it suits you well. He hadn't expected her to pick such a scent. Complimenting her further, he says, the necklace looks great on you. He gently touches Ashya's cheek, adding, it feels like I've finally met its true owner. As he leaves, Carlisle orders Luber to finish the dress alterations by the engagement ceremony. Ashya, surprised by the roughness of Carlisle's hands, thinks, I thought the crown prince's hands would be soft, but they're rugged like a warrior's. Suddenly, Ashya's pulse quickens. She reasons to herself, it's only natural that the hands of the battle commander, Lord Carlisle, would be warrior-like. Remembering the necklace, Ashya's spirits lift as she thinks about the 100 warhorses she can now buy. A few days later, on the day of Carlisle and Ashya's wedding vows, guests at the ceremony start gossiping. They whisper about the marriage being a facade, speculating that Carlisle will divorce Ashya once he becomes crown prince again. Rumors swirl that Miss Cecilia, the leading candidate for the crown, won't stand idly by. Cecilia Durpet, the beautiful golden-eyed girl who was the leading candidate for crown princess until Ashya's arrival, deduces that Carlisle might have agreed to marry Lady Pervaz only because Pervaz is an extraterritorial jurisdiction, beyond the imperial court's reach. She speculates that Carlisle might be testing the crown princess candidates, hoping some might withdraw from the competition due to this incident. However, Cecilia confidently resolves that she has no reason to step aside. She believes she holds the most favorable terms among all contenders. Her golden eyes, a trait shared by the Empress and the Emperor's mistress Viviana, make her the preferred choice for crown princess. Cecilia decides to prove to everyone that she is more worthy of the crown than Lady Pervaz. As the ceremony proceeds, the Queen, the King, and the High Priest of the temple, Gabriel Knox, enter the hall. The room buzzes with gossip about Miss Cecilia and High Priest Gabriel, the city's most handsome and beautiful. They predict that the bride will pale in comparison, expecting Ashya to look like a country bumpkin no matter how she dresses. The officiant calls out, requesting Carlisle and Ashya to enter the chapel. All eyes turn toward the entrance, mocking smiles ready. However, the crowd is stunned into silence as Ashya appears, looking strikingly beautiful in stark contrast to her usual self. The necklace around her neck, the same one the Emperor had gifted to Queen Evelina during their marriage, catches everyone's attention. Cecilia reassures herself, thinking Carlisle must have given the necklace just to make the marriage look believable. High Priest Gabriel finally commands everyone to take their seats and begins reading the wedding vows. In the middle of the ceremony, Ashya thinks the words of the Mass are endless, making her realize the clergy must lead a tiresome life. Gabriel requests Carlisle and Ashya to exchange rings. Carlisle produces a stunning ring and places it on Ashya's finger, immediately whispering in her ear that when she decides to sell these jewels later, she should auction them off for a much higher price than at a jewelry store. For most people, the ring symbolizes love and commitment, but for Ashya, it was merely an emergency fund. After the ring ceremony, Gabriel requests the bride and groom to sign the oath document. Once they sign, the king seals it with his stamp, officially solidifying their union. Gabriel announces that the groom and bride are now recognized by the laws of the imperial court and the gods. No one can deny this relationship, and both individuals must uphold their promises with a profound sense of duty and faithful love. Carlisle grins, realizing that he initially accepted the marriage for strategic reasons, but seeing his father and the Empress's disgruntled faces brought him unexpected satisfaction. Gabriel then requests Ashya and Carlisle to complete the oath with a kiss as their first act as a married couple. Hesitant, Ashya reasons that at least formally they are now a couple, so they must kiss. With a mischievous smirk, Carlisle extends his hand, grabs Ashya by the waist and kisses her deeply.